What the Damn, bro. Keith Frank being your boy, bud.
I'm
Just
just
saying.
My nose look like Ric Flair's nose.
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance.
Don't look at the camera. What? What? I'm getting flustered.
You're gonna get one of these, bud. I'm Jess.
I'm Wes.
And we are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance, and you are watching the NWCA Podcast, the only wrestling podcast out there that doesn't just talk wrestling history, we show history. And Wes, we're back, baby. Last week, we took a little side tour from our history tour last week and threw everybody a loop with the Paige Von Hess talk about her father, Kurt Von Hess. Let's just recap that before we continue.
So yeah, it was so nice to talk to her. I've known her for quite some time, and she graciously came on and told us some fantastic stories about being a child of a traveling wrestler. So it was pretty interesting, and we learned about something I didn't know about, that she has two other siblings, which is, we got that, and that was it. I didn't want to ask any more questions, so that was pretty neat. And I like Paige. She's been a great proponent for wrestling history forever and ever, as long as I've known her. Not personally as much as I have recently, but yeah, she's great, and fantastic stories about her dad.
Yeah, it was really fun too. And technically, we've only done one really wrestler. We did Gene. So Kurt Von Hess was our second one. It was kind of cool to do that with a family member.
Definitely.
So today's going to be fun because we did Montreal in 1972, Halifax 77. We're staying in Canada on our NWCA history tour. And today, for the first time, we're going to continue going where we haven't gone, and we're in Calgary today.
Yeah,
first time ever we're talking about Calgary Stampede.
And it's pretty interesting because of just the vast history of Stampede, all of Stu's promotions over the years from the 50s right up until Vince bought him out, and then the boys started back up again and everything. Long and terrible road trips as far as I understand. Oh my God. But the circuit lasted for a long time, and lots of many stars came from or through Stampede before they became famous. So that's, I think, one of the most famous things about Stampede.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize how many Canadian wrestlers come out of Calgary.
Yeah.
Abdul the Butcher there. He's not Canadian, but Jake the Snake Roberts was there. You know what I mean? You talk about the road travel. I remember watching the Evan Ginsberg documentary there, 350 Days.
Yeah.
And Superstar Billy Graham's like, I remember going to Calgary and it being like 50 below and just a complete culture shock.
Yeah.
Right?
JYD started there. Just so many guys started.
Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. Well,
Haystacks Calhoun. Wasn't that Haystacks Calhoun?
No, that was a guy from UK. So many guys from UK got their North American break going to Stampede. I mean, Sean Reagan, who you probably don't know, that's fine. I think Les Thornton got his break there. Just tons of guys got their break there that came from Britain. We talked about
Dynamite Kid, British Bulldog, Dynamite Kid, British Bulldog.
Yeah, like even the guys in the more modern era that still came over there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We could say even I don't know. What do you think about mentioning Chris Benoit's name? I mean, he was a fantastic wrestler. Maybe he
just leave it at that.
He blew his lid, but he was fantastic, and he started out as mini Dynamite Kid, right?
Yeah, well, you gotta leave it at that. I think just leave it. Yeah, he was a good professional wrestler.
Fantastic wrestler.
I asked. Actually, you know what? I sent in a question to Kurt Angle, his podcast, and I asked him who, in his mind, would be the best Canadian technicians, and like he legit said Bret Hart and Owen, and then right behind Owen it would be Benoit.
Wow.
So it just goes to show you that everyone respects his in-ring work.
Yes.
And but today, 77 was Nova Scotia. Today we're going June 6th, 1975. So what do we do best? Set the scene.
Hang on a second. I'm going to do a Neil Peart. Oh,
He broke himself.
hang on.
This guy breaks shit in his fucking room.
Sorry. Technical difficulties there for a
Oh
second.
my god. You know, I know who Neil is, by the way.
It did sound really good in my head.
Oh yeah? Jesus Christ. Okay, setting the scene. Set the scene.
And you were playing the bass pedals and the pedals,
Hello.
the floor pedals.
Cello.
Yep.
I play the cello. Well, if you tilt the cello a little bit, cello, you got a bass.
Yeah.
Me. All right.
Love the cello.
Oh my god, get out of here with this guy and his long jeans and all this shit. NWA champion, 75, June 6th, 75. Who do you think it is? Well, you got the script there. So Jack Briscoe.
Yep.
Yep. 77 would be Harley Race, right?
Yep.
And he would win it off Terry Funk in Toronto. It's
Just
cool.
recently.
Yeah, I think we posted that
Year
in.
Yeah.
We posted that in our group, I think, in our Ontario group. That's why we say join our group. You never know what you're gonna miss. AWA champion, and on June 6, 1975, Nick Bockwinkel.
Yeah, I think in 75, I think he had just won the title belt off of Vern sometime in 75. I can't remember exactly when.
Vern gave it up, buddy.
Yeah, Vern was skiing.
And the WWF champion was Bruno Sammartino, and this would be in his second reign, I do believe, right?
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
Which is, you know, they had problems there, and they had to do something. The heels they wouldn't let the heels hold the belts long. Like Billy Graham held the belt for like a couple of years, I think, at the most, and he was so popular, but they just decided, no, it says here on the piece of paper, you're finished in 2.37 years, and that's it, you're gone. And they should have made Superstar Graham a baby face and ran with it.
You love Billy Graham, eh? Every time Billy Graham comes up, you're always fanboying for the Billy.
And he, like you said, he started out in Calgary as Wayne Coleman, a musclehead.
Wow. It's kind of cool, though, to know that all these guys started up in Canada.
Definitely.
Or like in the dungeon somehow.
Yep.
But anyways, okay, well, before we get into the main content of the show, we want to remind everybody that the NWCA podcast is sponsored by Grand River Tea. Get your premium loose leaf teas from the Canadian company out in Winnipeg. You can save 15% on your final purchases over at grandrivertea.ca. Check out grandrivertea.ca, search their wide variety of teas. Throw them all in your cart, put in the code NWCA at checkout, and save 15% off your final purchase. Save money while staying healthy. Bingo! Yep. Grand River Tea. Props to Grand River Tea. Always been a sponsor since day one of our adventures.
And they've got a new Celtic morning breakfast tea, and it's absolutely divine.
Divine.
Guess what? Divine. Guess what, Jesse? I've given up coffee. It's been like 4 days now.
What are you, nuts?
I'm drinking tea only. Yeah, basically. Yep.
How do you like drive a vehicle for a living and not drink coffee though?
Tea is hot. It's fine.
True. Fair enough.
So I was just thinking about June 6, 1975, and if we're going to set the scene, I think this was just a few months before I started at one of my first really big jobs in Toronto.
Okay.
And I think I was making $4.25 an hour.
Wow.
Just to put that into perspective. So that's like not even $100 gross a week.
And it was a lot cheaper for everything though.
Oh, and that was like the starting wage before you got the full-time in the union wage, the union shop. But yeah.
Look at this guy setting the scene with some personal stuff. 75, I wasn't even born yet, so.
That's too bad. Do you have older brothers, sisters? Do you have older?
No, I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, take a look at my life. I'm a nut. Boom, here we go.
So this card was really strange to research, and there's the program for it, which is most bizarre because
So Sheik's on the front, but they're advertising Sheik for the next week's show.
Yep.
Because this card is, like you say, it is like, I think it was like a tournament or something once we go over it. I'll open it up. Of course, guys, we're going to have pictures in the credits and everything. So if you missed anything, don't worry about it. We got everything on lockdown. So yeah. Elimination tournament for the right to face World Junior Heavyweight Champion Ken Mantell. So it doesn't say who won the program in my tournament.
So I researched this.
Okay. I would hope so.
Like crazy. And 2 weeks after this card on the Calgary newspapers, there was a void of about 2 months on the group of newspapers. So boom, nothing. I couldn't tell who won, who faced Ken Mantell, when it was. Now I'm assuming that they would have done this tournament leading up to the Calgary Stampede card, which was the big card of the year in the summer, where they had the NWA champion and Andre usually showed up, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure that this was one of the highlights of working towards that card, but I could not find anything on it. Zip, zilch. Now I got a bunch of guys listed who were working there, but to look at this card, it's kind of not very many matches.
No.
And these guys wouldn't work. I don't think they'd work twice for an elimination match, but I like we just couldn't. I love the program. It was a hard card to research.
I agree. I don't even think couldn't find the results. I checked Wrestle data. I looked into it. I couldn't find anything. Usually sometimes when I buy these off eBay and stuff, they're used and they circle the winners.
Yeah.
And they write on them and say who won and who lost, which is great. But on this one, there's nothing like that at all. It's like, yeah, there's nothing.
I looked at Wrestle data, but I also looked at the Regina, the Edmonton, the Saskatoon, and the Calgary newspapers for this time frame.
Yeah.
And because Stu didn't pay too much for advertising, there was next to little or nothing. So I did get a bit of information, but not too much. Other than what I already sort of know anyway. So yeah, we can still run through.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like we always say, we're just fans talking about the cards. So
because there's only 3 actual matches listed on this, I imagine there was probably at least 2 matches or 3 matches before that for the tournament. So it would have been maybe these 2 guys and these 2 guys wrestled, and then the winners of them would have wrestled to move on to the next. But I'm assuming that 6 matches would have been fine.
Yeah. Big match too. So we'll see. Gil Hayes versus Dan Crawford.
Yeah. So we got Canadian boys here. Gil Hayes from Fort Francis, Ontario, which is now Thunder Bay.
Oh, okay.
He was in Ontario for a while, and before that, he was in Detroit as Lord Anthony Stark. So if you ever see that on Detroit cards, you know it was Canadian boy Gil Hayes. Ed Whalen used to make so much fun of this guy because he used to say something like Mrs. Hayes' bad little boy Gilbert. That's what he called him. that was and it's funny how you could remember that phrase from 25, 35, 45, 50 years ago. But yeah, Mrs. Hayes' bad little boy Gilbert. And then he's facing Dan Crawford, who is from Vancouver, also known as King Crow in California, feuded against Killer Kowalski, and I think he may have even held the America's title at one time. Dan Crawford, famous in many books for being the first person to do a ladder match.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, in Calgary.
So, that's pretty sick, actually.
Yeah. And he hit a pretty good long career, and he's pretty.
Here's a picture here, Wes. I got
okay.
So again, don't worry. I'm just showing this to Wes. We got a B-roll coming for everybody else. So there he is. Yeah. And then here it says Dan Crawford is the man who has been chosen to meet world champion Jack Briscoe when the ladder matches. Hold on. Sorry. To meet world. Let's cut off. Chosen to meet world champion Jack Briscoe when the ladder makes his appearance here next month. So Jack Briscoe obviously coming next month, right?
Yeah.
Not too surprisingly, Crawford is extremely pleased that he is the man chosen to face the man who won the world title from Harley Race. And then it just says, I'd be a little goofy if I wasn't pleased and excited or pretended that I wasn't. What an opportunity that is. The number of men who get a shot at the world championship is pretty small, believe me. So it just goes on here, and then it says, Crawford has a fine wrestling background, and a few will disagree over the decision to send him against the champion. Crawford also is well aware that the world champion is quite a fighting machine himself.
Wow.
So there you go. Just to add to some of your stuff there, Gil Hayes is in the Stampede Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Yeah. Dan Crawford retired in 1986.
Okay.
Yeah, just some Google stuff. Anything can be found, people. Just type it in. This is a pretty interesting match here. Mark Lewin and Larry Lane versus Mr. Hito and Prince George.
Yeah.
Is it Hito or Hido?
Hito.
Right? Yeah, right.
So let's start.
Mark Lewin obviously is Don Lewin's brother.
Don and his other he had two brothers, Ted and Don.
Yeah. I found out he debuted at the age of 16.
Yeah. Well, you got two who are already wrestling. They just take you along for the road, right?
True. Yeah, true enough.
And I do have a book by his brother, Ted Lewin, called I Was a Teenage Wrestler, and it talks all about getting Mark into the business.
Oh, wow, eh?
Yeah.
I gotta see some of these old school books that you have. I should start reading some of these because you can't find them anymore.
Oh, no. Yeah, so, what else do we can say about Mark Lewin? Like a massive career.
Huge.
If he started when he was 16 and he wrestled till he was like in his mid 50s, like a 40-year career, and he was like at the top everywhere he went.
Massive star in Florida. Tagged with Kevin Sullivan, no?
Yep.
With his little group, I think, right?
Yep, the little demonic weirdos.
Yes.
Which was so cool because at the time it would have been so perverse. It would have been so bizarre. Like nowadays, yeah, whatever, but back then it was pretty.
Yeah, with all the Charles Manson stuff going on, all that crap, and all the demonic stuff.
It was really out there, yeah.
Yeah.
But Lewin main evented like in Texas and in Australia and Calgary, in Quebec, in Toronto, in Detroit, everywhere he went, he main evented, and he was great.
For the Wild Man too, at one point in time.
Certainly did. Yeah, Larry Lane was an Olympic wrestler, or at least a collegiate wrestler. Anyways, probably billed as Olympic. Yeah, he was Olympic champion, but whatever, right?
Yeah.
You one of those kind of guys who Stu Hart liked because he was legit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, it says here when I was looking into him, it says that he debuted in '73. So we're only 2 years into his since his debut. So if Stu Hart took a liking to legit athletes all the time.
Yeah.
Jim the Anvil Neidhart being a perfect example of that.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah. Anything else on Larry Lane you want to talk about before we go to the team?
That was it was just part of the People's Army.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get to the main event eventually. But yeah, there was a People's Army here, and they took this everywhere. It was in Calgary. It even came to a little bit to Toronto. Lewin and Curtis carried this over in late 1975 into Toronto for a few matches. So, and actually, they worked on the same card, a few cards for the Wild Men in the late 75 also. But yeah, the People's Army.
Here's a picture of Larry Lane here. He's in the program, so we'll get another shot of that.
Yeah, exactly what I remember.
Yeah.
Trying
to see if it says anything about him here, but not really.
No.
First thing I see here, when the Sheik arrives, at least one man is going to be extremely interested. He's Mark Lewin. A longtime bitter opponent of the man who was able to produce fire from his fingertips. So, Mark Lewin and the Sheik.
Who? Lewin could produce fire from his fingertips, or Sheik could?
Sheik, get out of here. You didn't know it.
So I seriously doubt that Sheik ever even showed up. I really doubt it. I really, really, really doubt it. Like what we talked about before. Why would he go to BC or Calgary? It's too far out of the way. He was way too busy. I think it might have been a promotional thing.
Could have been.
And then they
Because
just
he didn't go out often, because you got to think 75. So if he's going there in the summer of 75, you're talking you're just coming to maybe almost an end of when he had the book in Toronto, or just in the middle of when he had the book.
Just in the middle. So
because he had the book till 78, right?
77, yeah, late
77, 78. So regardless, he's got the book in Toronto. He's booking Detroit. He's trying to take Ohio. That's what I'm saying. Someone said this is a rare piece because he barely made it out there.
So
if he even did.
Now, the only thing I'm thinking about is that, and we'll talk to Dave Brzezinski about this, because I want to focus on especially about one thing about when we speak with Dave, is that there was a group that splintered off the Sheik called the UWA, Universal Wrestling. And it was against the Sheik. A bunch of guys went over there, and Sheik had to come back from Japan to stop the bleeding.
Counterbalance.
And it would have been around this time. So there's no way Sheik's flying back from Japan and stopping in Calgary, even for one night, when his promotion is being ambushed from inside.
Yeah.
Also, you got to figure 1975. Yeah. Okay. Saturday night, Cobo, Sunday night, Toronto Maple Leaf Gardens. He was also wrestling in Montreal at this time still. And all of his other circuits in Ohio and wherever else, right? Mm-hmm. He couldn't. Friday night is a big. Stu Hart would have had to pay him so much money to fly out there to do one shot on a Friday night, where he could have been headlining his own card in Toledo or Dayton or Columbus or something, or wherever, when he would have been stuffing his pockets full of money, right? I seriously doubt it. I did not check that, but I seriously doubt he ever showed up there. But it goes along with the blood thing that was going on there in Calgary at the time, because the People's Army was just nothing but blood, and more blood.
Yeah, they went through a phase. I read that in the beginning of Bret Hart's book. It was just, that's what they were known for. Because that's how they had to attract fans. Because it wasn't until Dynamite came in and kind of saved the territory.
Yeah, and all wrestling everywhere had ebbed and flowed, right? So things start sinking. You figure, what can we do to bring the people back? Well, let's bring in Curtis and Lewin and their friends, and let's do a People's Army.
Yeah, exactly, bro. Okay, Mr. Hito, best known for training Bret Hart, in my opinion.
Yep.
And he's probably best known for all his work he did in Stampede Wrestling.
He done lots, Dad.
He done so much. He done. Who taught this guy how to speak, bro?
So yeah, he debuted in 1967, and massive career. Yeah, he was one of the many Tokyo Joes, Japanese wrestlers who played the stereotypical kind of whatever. It says here that he helped train Chris Jericho too. I don't know, is that true?
I don't know. It could be, but from what I know, Jericho was in the dungeon when I think Bruce and Keith were down there training.
I think it might have been Jericho was obviously a lot long after this. Jericho was initially trained in Winnipeg here, right? By Candello.
I think so.
Yeah.
It says here, Mr. Hito wishes that the international tag team picture could be cleared up. He's not the only one. Okay, cool. Thanks, Stu.
Yeah.
Prince George.
Yeah, that's a city in Alberta.
Yeah, you're hilarious.
That's it.
He's actually in here. It says,
Yes, really?
Yeah, he is. It says, I was a bit surprised when King Curtis appeared with his brother, Prince George.
Okay.
While he isn't too well known in these parts, he has made his mark in other places. My feeling is that only a brother would want to wrestle with Curtis.
Is there a picture?
Prince George picture? No.
Oh, that's too bad because I've never heard of the guy before.
There's a picture of Gama Singh here,
Yep.
but yeah, I don't know. Anyways, but yeah,
We could
tag match.
See, like I was hoping that I could get more information from the newspapers because I tried the whole Stampede circuit, and I was hoping to get like something just after or just before to find out who these people were and what was going on, especially with the tournament, but to no avail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's okay. All right, let's get into it. The main event. Main event time. No referees. Anything goes. Champion King Curtis Iaukea versus the same guy we talked about in Nova Scotia, Big John Quinn.
Yeah, Big John Quinn, definitely one of our favorites growing up back in the day of my friends and myself when I had friends who liked wrestling.
Yeah.
Big guy, 6'4", something, maybe 6'5", Hamilton boy. And Paige told us some great stories about being in Calgary with him, which was really, really cool. So you'll have to watch that episode to hear about those stories. I'm not going to repeat them. They're her stories, right?
Yeah, no, if you want to hear all about that, just check out the Paige Von Hess, Kurt Von Hess episode.
Yeah.
We also talk about a lot about Big John Quinn since he's in the main event in our Halifax, Nova Scotia episode, which is 2 years ahead of the state.
Correct.
So check that out. King Curtis Iaukea. He's in here. Look at this scarred fucking face, bro.
Oh, the fantastic scars. What an awesome guy. Now, you said that people want to hear me do interviews, and you know what? I remember Terry Dart used to do a great King Curtis, and I can sort of do it too. So you ready for King Curtis interview?
Yeah, let's hear it.
20 years ago, Mark Lewin, we fought on the beaches of Hawaii. We spilled our blood. We made pacts with the devil to get into each other's psyche. But here in Calgary, Stu Hart has put us and torn us apart. We will succeed, and Big Bad John and our army will kill. Well, we won't kill. We will put you down.
I mean, not between that or Ox Baker. I mean, I don't know who to.
He was just so scary, but athletic for a big chubby guy, and a massive bleeder. Just loved to bleed, and he did some excellent flips over the ropes, and he was pretty good. I mean, for a big guy, he was getting a little older by this time, but he was still really great. I loved King Curtis. There's been some fantastic pictures in the magazines of his forehead. It's a famous forehead. I mean, you get a picture of just this part.
Yeah, it's just all scarred up like Abdullah style.
King Curtis. Played football in the CFL for Vancouver. 2 years.
Yeah. I'm going to get into the CFL this year. A lot of my buddies watch it, and I'm just like, I've never even been to a CFL game.
No?
No.
I've been to a couple. It was a long time ago when I was a kid, but I like the CFL because it proves that you don't need 4 downs to score a touchdown. Just 3.
Yeah, that's not 2 and kick away.
Yep.
You want to talk anything about this card before we start wrapping it up here, buddy?
So what information I did get was coming into this match the day before, Quinn had beaten King Curtis in Regina by disqualification. So It was leading all up to these matches, and there was a loser leave town match eventually where Quinn left and Curtis stayed. So you had the People's Army, and you had Big Bad John's Army, who was the manager at the time.
Okay.
And if you've watched any of the King Curtis videos from Australia. He's the big guy with a like a construction kind of hard hat on, German type of helmet with big
Okay.
bushy guy, Big Bad John, and they had King Curtis, Big Bad John, Mr. Hito, obviously Prince George, and John Quinn was on that side, and then they switched over because what happens sometimes with this People's Army thing, guys were coming in, guys were coming out. So on the other side it was Larry Lane, Dan Crawford, and then when Quinn changed over and Mark Lewin, they were on the People's Army, and it was a great gimmick. It was really good, but as we've read so many times, people get tired of the blood and the non-stop, like Memphis kind of stipulations.
Yeah.
So it just gets too much. I was reading also in the newspaper because I said there was a gap. In August of '75, Stu just about lost his license because of complaints about the blood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was so close. He had to go to city council to fight to keep his wrestling license in Calgary. Which, if you read any of the books, the Stu Hart books or the Stampede books, I mean, he was always going to the city council because people were complaining, or people got hurt and they complained, or they tried to sue, and it was a very testy area for politics, anyways. And Stu had a lot of friends, but on the same note, when people start complaining, especially about blood or kids getting hurt or something in the audience, then they have to rein it in a little bit. Lewin and Curtis, they ended up burning out the area with their ultra violence, right? Way too much blood, and it can only last so long. And then they just took it somewhere else, and either they had just come from Australia, or they were going. I'd imagine they would have just come from Australia because they were there for a long time. But like I said, Curtis came to Toronto and wrestled Lewin, I think, a couple times in Toronto around this time period in the summer. And also Curtis and Lewin were wrestling for Dave, the Wild Man, at the time too.
I thought Lewin only worked for him in '86.
No. Lewin worked for him in 75 and '76.
But he just came up here in '86 with Sullivan.
Yeah, because Lewin was working when he left there. He was working in the Detroit-Toronto corridor also.
Oh, okay.
For the Sheik.
Sweet.
I do have a little bit here. I wanted to just paraphrase from one of Greg Oliver's books. Do it up. Quinn wrestled for years in Vancouver and Calgary, obviously, and his odyssey took him to Europe for 14 years. 14 years, where he was one of England's biggest stars. He also wrestled in Austria, and Germany. And he said, I loved it. I made good money. But he had a falling out in '87, which is a lot longer after this. And when he came back to Canada, he didn't want to gimmick out to the WWF style and just gave it up. And I also found this. I knew I had a picture of John Quinn. So I have a magazine here from Japan. And it's pretty, you've got to be pretty big when you get a couple color pictures in a magazine from Japan. So there's dropping an elbow on someone. Oh my God, it's Kurt Von Hess in the background.
That's hilarious.
Cool. And
have to send that to Paige.
There's a picture of him too. I did not notice that it was Kurt Von Hess in the back.
Boom. Yeah. Only on our show.
Only on our show. Other than that, I liked the People's Army as a kid. The brutality and everything. Because on TV, on Stampede TV, which we were getting in Ontario here at the time, it was so different and so bizarre, right? And they showed main event matches on the TV station, so that's really cool. Anything else, sir?
Canadians on the card, guys that work for the Wild Man.
Gil Hayes worked for the Wild Man.
Mark Lewin worked for the Wild Man.
Dan Crawford didn't. He's a Canadian. Lewin and Curtis and Quinn didn't. But so we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Of the 8 guys, we don't know exactly who Prince George was, so we'll cross him out. We've got 1, 2, 3 Canadians on the card, so that's pretty good. And then we have no idea, like I said, who was on the undercard at the tournament. So,
hey, we go with what we have.
Could have been all Canadians in that there.
We do our best, and we're not going to switch. Like, we released the history tour. We're sticking to the plan. We're sticking to those dates.
It's important to look at it that you're picking a piece of your collection that's special. I'm pretty sure that that's really unique. That program.
It ain't going anywhere.
And it's like, let's do this. You know, we didn't research it. We weren't going to. We were just like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's find out. Holy smokes! Look what we found out. She maybe never even appeared.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of cool. But that's my favorite belt he wears too. I love the belt.
Oh, I love that belt. The red.
My favorite belt. The picture you have with Jimmy Snuka wearing that belt at Maple Leaf Gardens. Yeah. That's probably one of my favorite pictures that I've seen.
Oh, like, he looks so
blow that shit up, bro.
That's a great picture. One of the best I've ever taken. Lucky.
So next week we have something planned, but before we get into next week, remind everybody that you can find us on Facebook at the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance book, the Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, or the Wild Man Tribute page. We're on TikTok. By all means, check out our YouTube channel, the NWCA Podcast. Subscribe, like, comment, share, all the fun stuff that everybody else says when they have a podcast. Next week, next episode, we're staying in Canada. We're staying in Canada. We're coming a little further in the timeline, and we're going to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
And we're bringing out an old friend, Andy the Taxman. I'm pretty sure is going to come out with us for that one.
That should be fun.
And he's going to talk the whole card with us. So he asked if we're doing the whole Winnipeg. I said, no, we're just going to specifically talk this card.
Winnipeg 1980.
Yeah, AWA. First time we've ever talked AWA.
I had a person comment on a picture I put on the last couple of days who lives in Winnipeg. So I'm going to get a hold of him, and we're going to go out and have some coffee and shoot the breeze. That's going to be cool. Another new Winnipeg wrestling friend.
There you go.
I texted Andy the other day about something, and he was like very gracious with his time with me. So that's cool. So I'm looking forward to talking with Andy again, and I'm looking forward to focusing on an AWA card for a change. It's going to be really cool.
Yeah, because after the Winnipeg episode, after the AWA episode, I think we got 4 in Ontario.
3. London, and Toronto.
Yeah, so obviously we have to do a Toronto episode because everybody loves when we do Toronto episodes.
Yes.
However, we've never done London and we've never done Stratford. So we're going to change it up and go to some other places in the 50s, and it's going to be fun. I can't wait.
And then this could be really good when we're going to 1965 in Dallas, Texas. That should be amazing.
Yeah, that main event is pretty big. I'm not going to say what it is, but it's pretty fucking big, and I have the program with me, so
awesome.
But until that, guys, thank you all for subscribing and believing in what we do.
Please and thank you.
Yes, like a lot is happening. Thank you to Grand River Tea for sponsoring the show. Johnny G, you're the man.
Johnny G came up just awesome in the last month or so with all the stuff that's going on in his life. He's a busy boy, and he was able to.
He's pushing through. Everybody's pushing through, and like us, we'll be back next time. First time we talk AWA. Thank you all. Please share our channel. Subscribe if you haven't. Until next time, I'm Jess.
I'm Wes.
And you just watched the NWCA podcast. Thanks for watching.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
We are the National Wrestling Clipping Alliance. It's the NWCA Podcast.
I love doing this, and I love you in a, cool wrestling history kind of way.
Hey, easy, man.